São Paulo repeats the same story, reaches 8 games without a win in the Brazilian Championship, and is defeated after a comeback in the 22nd round of the competition. Before I break down this game, I'm going to give some context for those of you watching. São Paulo hasn't won in the Brazilian Championship since April. It's August. It's been more than 100 days without a win in the competition, without getting the 3 points, and the situation is starting to get even more critical. Another important thing to highlight is that São Paulo went onto the field after weeks of training. So São Paulo had practically 15 days. It wasn't exactly 2 full weeks. I think it was about 13 or 14 days training straight without any commitments in the meantime, right? Because in the last few days, Grêmio, for example, had matches in the Copa Sudamericana, and São Paulo saw their opponents playing rounds of the Copa do Brasil. Remember that São Paulo was eliminated in the 5th phase of the competition, so they were knocked out very early. So they had all this time to prepare for their return to league play away to Grêmio. They had a pretty even record. They're not facing too many injury problems, right? It was already known that Lucas Moura and Tolai wouldn't be available. The latest absence was Arthur as well, who had some pain during the week, so he was rested, thinking about the match this Tuesday against Bolívar over in Bolivia. Another tough one, but for the Copa Sudamericana. So it was São Paulo that had a lot to do and didn't do anything. So São Paulo goes onto the field struggling a lot against Grêmio, right? Grêmio was putting a lot of pressure on them. Yeah, up until then, for most of the first half, the only real clear chance São Paulo had was that header from Luciano, which unfortunately didn't go in. That would have taken a lot of pressure off the team up to that point. São Paulo was really struggling, especially on the left side, so they saw Grêmio attacking a lot there and had to rely on some heroic saves from Rafael, who was doing really well and knew how to defend. In the second half, the same pattern we've seen in recent games repeats itself, with São Paulo managing to take the lead, right? So at the very end of the first half, there was that goal that everyone thought was by Caleri, but it went through Marcos Antonio, and the referee confirmed it was actually an own goal by Gustavo Martins. So São Paulo went into halftime with the lead, repeating the pattern we've seen in other games. So it's São Paulo that comes back from halftime with the lead, but the team completely falls apart. They concede the equalizer, then the comeback, and end up losing. They can't hold on to the lead. The advantage didn't even last 3 minutes, and Alves was right there. It all started with a mistake by Arboleda after a corner kick on a high ball. So you can see that every time there's an aerial ball, it's a big risk for Zacuda for São Paulo, right? The team has been struggling a lot with this kind of play. Yeah, and it's not just from this game against Grêmio, it's been happening in other matches too. Grêmio ties the game, São Paulo completely falls apart, and Dorival even tries to make some changes. He takes Ferreirinha out, who was playing more as a winger, and puts in Caule to play more through the middle and set up a front two with Luciano and Caleri, but it doesn't work. So, São Paulo, close to the end of the match, sees Pavon, who had already scored in the last game against Grêmio from a free kick, score another free kick goal. In a play that caused a lot of controversy, it's being widely discussed on social media by the fans. Because at the moment São Paulo sets up the wall for this free kick, there's no one lying down behind it, right? There isn't, the Ronaldinho Gaucho move, as we usually say, and the ball goes over the wall and ends up in the back of the net. São Paulo is defeated after a comeback. So there are several questions that come up for this match, but I think what stands out the most is this streak of over 100 days without a win in the Brazilian league, and especially why São Paulo keeps repeating so many of the same patterns we've seen in recent games. Now São Paulo is switching gears and won't be back in Brazilian league action until next weekend. This Tuesday, they travel to Bolivia to face Bolívar in the round of 16 of the Copa Sudamericana. It's the only knockout tournament that Tricolor is playing in, and they're not making any distinction between competitions. So the tendency is that they'll also go with their full strength squad. They're also thinking about the Copa Sudamericana even as a way to end the drought in international competitions. Increase the fans' hope a little more and try to secure, at least this way, a spot in the Libertadores, which is the main focus and the big goal of the club this season. And of course, all the information, both from this post-game recap and about São Paulo's next match, you can follow here on Lance.